back to the show, Business Mastery for Startups, Scale-Ups, and Early Stage Businesses with your host, Jerry Gadori. That's me. Today, I have the honor of having my good friend Mark Cuccinelli with me. You may know Mark from such places as Redbeard Solutions, where he's the head of our people department. He's our chief talent acquisition manager, and it's his job to act as the liaison between our consulting clients and our recruiting teams as it relates to that part of our business. He also helps us quite a lot on retention strategies, which is, of course, another big part of our business, as well as employer branding, which is what we're going to talk about today. So for those of you that are familiar with our methodology that I talk about in our book and that we talk about over on destinationemployer.co, our digital program to help early stage companies to consistently attract, recruit, and retain top talent, we break down becoming a destination employer into those three categories: attract, recruit, and retain. Now, in the attract piece, it's all about building a consistent candidate attraction engine. And the way that we do that is pretty in depth. But what we want to focus on today is the branding as it relates to drawing in top talent. Now, we talk in the book and the program a lot about making sure you understand what that top talent is in the company culture that you have to ensure that beyond skills, that you've got the right person in that role. That's not what this is about. What we want to talk about today is both the corporate employer brand for talent and the individual personal brands of key players. So I'm going to talk about the employer brand real quick. Then we're going to talk about Mark and I about the different personas, the different brands, and how the individuals in the company want to represent themselves to create a cohesive and aligned employer brand in the market. So first things first, employer brand. The corporate brand needs to be consistent in the marketplace with a couple of different things. Number one, of course, is your target audience. If your target audience is a certain type of employee, we want that brand to reflect that. We want those people to be able to see themselves in that branding. So from a DEI perspective, you want to make sure that anything that you put out has all the categories of folks that you're hoping to attract. We want to make sure that the brand messaging is in alignment. So if you have a formal brand messaging, we want to ensure that that's the case. If it's a more laid back one, again, we want to make sure that's the case. Now, the other thing about employer branding we want to talk about before we move on to the personal branding pieces is that we want to make sure that employer brand, that corporate employer brand, speaks to people. So even if it is a corporate brand, people connect with people, not things. So a quick funny example, in our Redbeard Solutions corporate brand, one of our recruiters had a baby recently. And so from our corporate page, we put out a wanted poster with our person's daughter's face on it and announced her as a new team member. And it got incredible engagement. Why? Number one, new babies are adorable. She was no exception. But number two, because people connect with people. So be sure, and even in your corporate brand, that you're speaking to individuals and you're using internal folks as an example. So now we've got several different categories of people in our consulting company. But I'm going to lead off with Mark, in part because A, I've been talking the whole time, and B, because when we then talk about my personal brand within the company, my individual brand, you're going to see the differences between Mark and I. So Mark, first of all, please introduce yourself, and then let's talk about your personal brand and how that dovetails into Redbeard's corporate employer brand.
Yeah, I appreciate the time and having the opportunity to be on the show as well.
Always.
Even though, so when it comes to being the lead TAM or the director of people for the organization, a lot of times when we're looking at our personal brands, it's important, I think, that the messages are consistent, right? And what you're putting out there is not just what you believe to be factual, but something that can promote the culture and what the organization has to offer, right? You made a great point about saying a lot of times it's about the people. And when candidates or recruiters are looking at us through different lenses, you want to show that you have the ability to not just be a corporate entity, but a place where somebody wants to go and people that they want to work with as well. So there's a lot of different touch points that come along with that, but finding what I found to be very helpful is the engagement piece and being consistent with the outreaches and trying to build out your brand.
That makes a lot of sense. So you touched on a couple things I want to talk about. So the corporate brand is just that. It's the corporate brand. Now, Redbeard,
Yeah.
we're a pretty lighthearted company, so our
Yeah.
overall employer brand is pretty lighthearted. If you look at the Redbeard company page on LinkedIn, for example, it's pretty humorous. The tone is informal. Why? Because most of our clients are that way, and because the
Right.
senior leadership in the company certainly is that way, myself included. But one key thing I want to mention here. So our company page, it speaks to two different things. It speaks to our prospects and clients. So
Mm-hmm.
there's any type of sales type material is going to come through that page. It also speaks to candidates that we're attracting for our clients and for ourselves. Now, my personal brand, I try to keep the sales stuff away from it because I want to add value to the three categories of folks that I speak to. So my goal in my personal brand as the founder of Redbeard and the author of Destination Employer and the creator of the Destination Employer program, my group is really three deep. So the first one is CEOs and founders of startups. It's early stage leaders. It's
Yep.
operators and small businesses. So I want to put out content that's of value to them. The second category that I need to speak to in my personal brand is people that I might want to hire for Redbeard or for Destination Employer Program. So that might be
Right.
digital marketing folks. That might be recruiters. That might be internal office folks. That might be leadership consultants. The third group is mid to senior level individual contributing technologists that I want interested in us so that I can feed them to our recruiters.
Mm-hmm.
Because very often you see in the mid to senior level, they want to deal with leadership, not with recruitment. So I want to attract
Mm-hmm.
them as well. So my personal brand has to speak to three different personas.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you, as both an internal executive and someone who handles some of the mid to senior level recruiting, how is your employer brand different?
So to answer that, one of the things that have enjoyed, and how I got into recruiting to begin with is I just enjoy helping people, right? And trying to add value to their day to day. People are going through LinkedIn and other social media sites to see what's out there and they're looking for help, right? So oftentimes I'm looking at and trying to support candidates and also recruiters, other recruiters either in my space or someone that we might want to bring on board and the like. And my candidate range varies from executive to individual contributor and everything in between. So I want to make sure that the information that I'm producing is engaging. It allows somebody to be thankful just to see the information that's out there, something that they may not have known. Helping with, whether it's resume review, like different ideas and things that can actually help them get into their next great opportunity. Or they will want to reach out to us and say, well, how can we be a part of your organization? What are ways that, why are you successful? What does that mean? How did you get there? And how have you been able to continue to build your brand? And while I'm engaging and I'm trying to be consistent, but I have such a wide variety of individuals that on the candidate side that I can assist, and it's really, I have an opportunity to do a million different things, but for me it's all about helping people, right? And
Yes.
helping people get to the next level. And
Yeah, and frankly, that attitude and that perspective on your role and your place in the business world is a big part of the reason why I hired you. You know, that that authenticity plays well. The when people realize that you care about their outcome, they suddenly care about your ideas. And if you
Yeah.
look at Mark's content, for example, on LinkedIn, it's all helping people. And one of the things you'll see that I love about Mark is you'll see him posting jobs from other companies that aren't even our clients. Why?
Yeah.
Because it adds value. He's helping to elevate that job and getting that filled. And even though it's not our client, somebody sees that on Mark's feed. Now they've got a chance to get the job that they need. And that's one of
And
the
it's helpful.
yeah, no,
God,
exactly
I'm sorry.
right.
Apologies.
That's one of the things that we cultivate, at Redbeard is put people first, do everything you can to
Yeah.
help them, and at risk of sounding like a new age philosopher, what you put out in the universe comes back to you. And Mark's a great
Yeah.
example of that. And if I could just steal the mic for one more minute,
Of
from
course.
a content category perspective, as I mentioned, I serve three audiences. So the
Mhm.
things that I post, I in one day I might post, a go-to-market strategy to help a startup founder get their product or service out to their audience. I might then post something about effective recruiting techniques so that I'm
Mhm.
speaking to the recruiters I might one day hire. I might also post something about digital marketing to appeal to the digital marketers that I might need to hire. I might also post something about how to prepare for an interview so that the mid to senior level job seeker who's reading my content gets value as well. Mark doesn't have as much of that first category. He's speaking to recruiters he might need to hire for his team, and he's
Right.
speaking to those audiences. So, talk to me, Mark, about the type of content that you share in order to serve those two markets.
Yeah. So it varies, right? I mean, it depends on, and I'll often recalibrate based on what's hot in the market as well, right? So what you'll see from me oftentimes is sharing from my network. And a lot of times, you mentioned, I'm taking jobs that don't align to me, but what I do is I just want to help everybody around. So whether it's an organization that I used to work at or somebody who's in my network that I saw the role. It could be another recruiter that's like, hey, thank you for sharing that. Because what it does is it helps them generate or potentially generate more candidate flow to a rec that they're probably having a tough time with. And with that, you continue to grow your followers and your connections and things like that. And one thing that's important to me when I'm having these conversations is the follow up, right? So you have to follow up. If
Huge,
somebody reaches out to
huge.
you once and you don't get back to them, it's going to happen. We get a lot of in-mails, we get a lot of reach outs, and people want to have conversations. But if somebody reaches out to you more than once, you really should make that time, even if it's just a quick, a quick, hey, I don't have anything for you right now, but I'm happy to help down the line or in any other way that I can. And for those that I have had the pleasure of connecting and speaking with, I tell everybody the same thing. Now that we're connected, my network is your network. So if I can help you by, maybe you see a job out there and I'm connected to somebody at that company. If it's the right fit, then I will absolutely share that information. I will reach out and make the introductions as well. Does that mean you're going to get the job? Not necessarily, but at least now you can make an additional connection. You can have someone else in your network. And I found that when as part of the engagement piece, when you're offering the added assistance, which doesn't take much time, it's really not difficult. And that I think you had mentioned earlier, which I really liked, was that it's all going to come back to you in one way or another, right? So you pay it forward as best you can, not in any expectations like somebody's going to, I don't expect anybody to help me along the way, but I like to help people, and that's why I'm here. And when you're dealing with people's emotions, especially in over the last year, it's been brutal and it's been really difficult for a lot of people. So helping in just a little way can give somebody just that little extra spark and to not be so down, right? And when it's difficult to find these roles for people. So if I can continue as I continue to build my brand, I've worked and shared things around AI, free training, right? Because a lot of times if you can get free training and certifications, that's only going to enhance your profile. It's only going to enhance your persona. And it may help in when you're submitting your resume to a new opportunity. They can see, wow. And because not everybody can afford that right now. The market is what it is. So little things like that.
If
Yeah,
I
go
could
ahead,
jump
please.
in for just a quick second, you
Good.
touched on a bunch of things that I don't want to get lost in the conversation.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you said is about varying the type of content that you share.
Yeah.
So one of the things or a couple of things that are important as it relates to social media outreach and building your personal brands is that number one, you've got to be consistent. So one of the things that every single social media platform hates is inconsistent posting.
Yep.
So don't create a tempo that you can't maintain. Ideally, you're going to post once a day at least, but it doesn't need to be time consuming. It can be a simple repost. It doesn't all have to be content creation.
Right.
So keep that in mind as you're building your brands. Again, this is more tips for the audience when it comes to building that personal brand. Be consistent. Don't think you have to create everything brand new. You can reshare other people's posts. You can
Yep.
curate content by sharing things like YouTube videos and news articles. And to Mark's point, lists of training opportunities. The other thing, two things you mentioned that I really want to make sure that don't get lost is one is emotion. So if you're interacting, if you're a recruiter, and this of course isn't recruiting exclusive, but if you're a recruiter, you're dealing with people in an emotional state. When you have a year like the time that this is being recorded in, end of 23, beginning of 24, you're going to find that the marketplace emotion level is already high. There have been a lot of layoffs in technology, and the majority of our clients are technology. So there have been a lot of layoffs in technology. There's been a lot of layoffs in talent acquisition. So where Mark is dealing with both recruiters and technologists, these folks, they're afraid and they're angry. So if you make a little mistake like not replying, in their mind, it's a personal attack. It's a personal affront. Is it? No, it's not. But it feels that way. So you've got to be mindful of it. So Mark's advice of, if you miss one occasionally, it's not great, but life happens. If they reach out twice, make sure, even if it's just a quick, I'd love to connect. I'm swamped right now. I don't have anything. Some type of reply that avoids them feeling like you're attacking them personally.
And offer a time to follow up. Right.
Exactly.
So I'm slammed right now. I appreciate the reach out. I'm happy you're part of my network. If you can reach out to me on Tuesday at whatever time, let's get together then, and then we can figure things out from there. So don't leave it so far up in the air that they don't know when to reach back out, but give them time. I mean, it's just being more personable too, to let them know that you're there, and then you're not ignoring them, because oftentimes the unfortunate reality is recruiters get a bad stigma for not following up, and and that's the getting that bad publicity is never a good thing, and that's most recruiters don't want to go down that path. We don't want to ghost. It's not on purpose. So make sure you follow up with people and let them know that you're going to be there at the next opportunity that you have.
And you bring up another important point, and this is a general tip to the entrepreneurs out there. Be aware of any negative stigmas or negative stereotypes about your industry before you go online and start producing content. So Mark brings something about recruiting. Recruiters have a bad reputation for ghosting candidates. They have a couple other bad reputations to it, and I don't say this to belittle recruiters, don't get me wrong. But a couple other bad reputations. They only care about the commission if they're an agency recruiter. They're gonna take a half an hour of your time for an in-depth interview and then ghost you. To Mark's point, when it's time for feedback. So it's important you're aware of these. And here's the tip: so you don't accidentally reinforce them. So if Mark knows, and he does because he's very experienced, But if Mark knows that recruiters in general have a bad reputation for ghosting, he can preempt that by number one, not doing it, but number two, bringing it up early in a conversation. So you might say something like, so, Mrs. Candidate, I know a lot of recruiters have the bad rap of ghosting people. I will make this commitment to you now. I can't tell you whether or not you'll get the role, but I can tell you that I'll give you whatever feedback I do have, and I'll share with you the outcome as soon as I get it. Is that a fair statement? And then boom, problem resolved. He didn't accidentally feed a bad reputation.
Yep. And with that, I would say to candidates as well that if you're not hearing from the recruiter or whoever you're working with, be sure to follow up, and follow up more than once if you have to, right? But at the same time, when you're building your personal brand, you should go into it knowing who and what you want to be known for, right?
Yes.
You don't want to be Captain Ghosting, for everybody. When I talk to candidates, and for any candidates that I've, or anyone in my network that's ever had an opportunity to have a conversation with me about a role or whatever the case might be, I tell everybody the same thing. My goal, first and foremost, is to develop a professional relationship. And what that means to me is being as transparent and as honest as I can about the opportunity, about the role, about the culture, about whatever it might be that needs to be there. Because if we're not developing the business or the professional relationship, then it's not worth it. I've had candidates reach out to me. There's some who, unfortunately, I haven't placed in my career, although I've tried on multiple occasions. Its timing just wasn't right. The opportunity wasn't right, or something, the role, went on hold or something along those lines. But I'm always humbled and honored when people still reach out and be like, hey, can you help me in one way or another? And I had, in fact, this afternoon, I was talking to a CISO who's looking for a new opportunity. And I said, here's what I can do to help. I can share that you're looking for a new opportunity. I don't have anything for you right now, but if you see somebody in my network or there's a role and I can introduce you, I'll do that. And then at the same time, I'm helping. And while I can't deliver miracles at times, at least I'm there to support you. We can talk about your resume, like what the market's like, what recruiters are looking at when they're reviewing resumes, how to deal with AI and how that's being utilized in applicant tracking systems, which is interesting at the
0
moment,
out of 10.
and how to get how to get around it in some ways, right? But just in preparation, because as a thought leader around recruiting and just understanding the strategies that align to that, if you're a candidate and you're not interviewing on a regular basis, then there's a lot of times you just don't know what to expect. And that's where, as a personal brand, if I can help in any way around that, just giving ideas, how to fix your summary a little bit, right? What to expect when somebody doesn't reach back out, how to engage that way. Like, these are all little things that you can help people. And that's how I want to be known, right? But you, not you, Jerry, specifically, but other recruiters might not want that. They might just want to fill the job, and that's okay too. But be clear about that. Be honest about it. Here's how I can help. Here's what I'm trying to do. And then consistently market that piece to others so that you have people wanting to reach out to you and find out, why is this working? How did you get so many followers? Like, how do you truly, invest in others along the way? So
yeah, if I could hop, you touched on another important tip for entrepreneurs and startup and early stage leaders. So recruiting is a service industry. And any service industry is only as good as its last couple projects and only as effective as its reputation. And one of the easiest ways to safeguard that, and Mark touched on it without saying it, is to set and manage expectations.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk to somebody, let's face it, CISO, any C-level role, there's not ever a ton of those roles open. They're a senior role. There's not ever a lot. So when you talk to that person and you say your background is excellent, I see great potential here. However, we don't currently have this role.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how I'd like to work with you moving forward. Does that work for you? Okay, great. You're setting an expectation. Now, the other half obviously is executing on that. But by setting that
Right.
expectation, you're not creating a false expectation in that person, and you're letting them know what to expect. And that shepherds your reputation, which here's a great way, regardless of what the service is. Obviously, Mark's talking about recruiting, but here's a great way to gauge a service provider you're thinking about bringing on. And that's ask them to talk about the length of their relationships. Mark's been
Mm-hmm.
doing this for about 20 years. I guarantee you he could talk about candidates he's worked with for 15 plus years. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason is because he's built a strong reputation. Now, that transactional recruiter that Mark mentioned towards the end of his piece is somebody I wouldn't personally hire because we don't do any type of transactional recruiting. Recruiting is only
Right.
about 20% of what we do as a company anyway, but everything we do is high touch. Now, that transactional recruiter has a place, but that place is probably in a high volume recruiting job. Again, I'm not
Yeah.
besmirching that, but it's a very different role. So if that person doesn't clearly describe how they work with people, their reputation is going to get hammered fast. So,
Yep.
Mark,
Yeah.
I want to switch gears a little bit. So we talked
Sure.
about how my audience is 3 people: startup founders and leaders, it's individual contributors, and it's recruiters or personnel that I might need to hire. Yours is
Yep.
really 2 people, or 2 groups rather. It's recruiters
Yeah.
that you might need to bring onto one of your teams, or it's mid to senior level candidates, so you might be helping your recruiters to hire. Now, if we had a representative from our recruiting team here, which in retrospect I should have set up, they would say that they only have one audience, and that's candidates. But
Right.
because we work with pretty diverse technology companies, working with lots of different tech stacks, cybersecurity, AI,
Yep.
cloud stuff, deep tech, standard IT, software development, pretty much the gamut, they have to create a presence in many different categories. And speaking for them, the way that they do that is to create specific content targeted to each individual discipline that they on their team work with, as
Yep.
well as general information for candidates like how to interview better, how to prepare for an interview, how to
Yep.
format your resume, those sorts of things. That's how they add value. And if I could sum up our whole talk today, it's all about creating value consistently for the audience you seek to serve. Would you agree with that, Mark?
100%. 100%. And it's the consistency, the engagement, the bringing your own persona to the stage, right? But the follow up, like it's really, the brand that you build is only as good as what you actually execute on, right? If you're
100%.
talking a big game the whole time, but you're not doing anything on the back, it's like, yeah, I'll give you a call about this, or we'll talk about that. But if you never actually do it, that's not building a brand. Well, it's building the wrong brand, to be
It's
honest.
building the brand you deserve.
Right. No, 100%. And so that's where that value add is. It's not even just about the business side of things too. It's just your persona in general. Like, who do you want to be recognized as? Do you
Being a
want
decent
and
human
if
being.
it's not, if you don't stay on the positive, if you don't do what you say you're going to do, you'll reap what you sow, and then you won't have the network that you want or think you deserve. There's work involved in it, and it's and what's from a recruiting perspective, as you touched on with what our team might say is, if you're not having that engagement then you're not going to, the next time you try to call somebody, they're not going to pick up. And you might have the perfect job for them too. And they're like, no, Mark didn't follow up with me the last time. He didn't do this thing. He didn't do that. He's not consistent. I mean, you lose not just, you lose relationships, right? And transactional business that we do, if you're building that relationship in the wrong way, then it's not going to help you out in the short or the long run.
And that's why I love the question of asking about length of relationships. But listen,
Yeah.
as is always the case when we get together, we're talking a lot and we're running short on time. So I'd like to wrap this up here. We can always do another episode. I'd like to wrap this
Yep.
up here with just reiterating, when it comes to your brand, understand the audience you serve, create content consistently that serves them, and make sure that you're authentic. People can sniff out inauthenticity from a million miles away. Mark, I'd like to thank you for being on the show. You were awesome as always. I'd like to ask two things from people who enjoyed what they saw today. The first, wherever it is that you consume this podcast, please give it a review. Please subscribe. It really helps us to get the message out. The second is that we are incredibly proud to present the Destination Employer digital program designed to help early stage companies, startup founders, and small business operators to consistently attract, recruit, and retain the top people in their markets and form them into highly performant teams. Go over to destinationemployer.co. The link is in the description below, and learn about it. We will help you to create an unfair advantage for yourself. Thank you very much for tuning in. And until next time, create something awesome.